Good Sunday evening to Summa scholars. I have finished my Sunday festivities and merrymaking and finished Vespers, and now we're going to wrap this up real quick. So listen, here's the scoop, folks. First of all, I don't have lighting in the room. All I have is this wee little candle. So you're going to have to deal with that. And I've got friends downstairs. The neighbors have come over to read Lord of the Rings. And I haven't eaten yet. So I'm going to get through this real quick and go down and join the party. All right, let's get through this really quick. Starting question 23, predestination. That's a big fancy word. Does God predestine everything, and what's the scoop with that? And then we'll hit Article 1 today and almost finish it. All right, let's get into it so I can get going. After consideration of divine providence, we must treat of predestination and the book of life. We're going into the book of life. Let's see who gets in there. Concerning predestination, there are 8 points of inquiry. 1, whether predestination is suitably attributed to God. 2, what is predestination and whether it places anything in the predestined. What is predestination and whether it places anything in the predestined? That sounds... So we're building off of the previous question, which was about providence. So is God tinkering with stuff, and how does that tinkering happen? Number 3, whether to God belongs the reprobation. Oh my gosh. Whether to God belongs the reprobation of some men. So now we're hitting the Calvinist question. 4, on the comparison of predestination to election. Whether election, one of the tulip. That is to say, the predestined chosen. 5, whether merits are the cause or reason of predestination or reprobation or election. 6, of the certainty of the predestination, whether the predestined will infallibly be saved. We're hitting up some Calvinist stuff here today. Thomas is going to talk to the Calvinists. 7, whether the number of predestined is certain. And 8, whether predestination can be furthered by the prayers of the saints. Wow, this is all kinds of mind-warping stuff going on right now. What a compelling image here of Craig late night after a day of merrymaking. So glad that we're at the beginning stage of this. Tell you, man, things on the Beaver Galleon get wild sometimes, especially around Sunday evening too. All right, Article 1, whether men are predestined by God. Objection! Ralph says, Thomas, I got to take you to task on this. Number 1, Ralph, the first beaver, walks up and says, it seems that men are not predestined by God. For Damascene says, it must be borne in mind that God foreknows, but does not predetermine everything, since he foreknows all that is in us, but does not predetermine it all. But human merit, that's the end of the quotation, but human merit and demerit are in us, for as much as we are the masters of our own act of free will. All that pertains, therefore, to merit or demerit is not predestined by God, and thus man's predestination is done away. All right, here we go. Ralph's got his first one. Larry steps up to bat and has his objection. Objection 2. Further, all creatures are directed to their end by divine providence, as was said above. Question 22, Articles 1 and 2. But other creatures are not said to be predestined by God, therefore neither are men. Okay. Objection 3. Further, the angels are capable of beatitude as well as men. But predestination is not suitable to angels, since in them there never was any unhappiness. For predestination, as Augustine says, is the purpose to take pity. This is going to be all kinds of interesting questions in this question 23. Therefore, men are not predestined. Objection 4. Further, the benefits God confers upon men are revealed by the Holy Spirit to holy men, according to the saying of the apostle in 1 Corinthians. Now we have received not the spirit of this world, but the Spirit that is of God, that we may know the things that are given us from God. End quote. Therefore, if man were predestined by God, since predestination is a benefit from God, his predestination would be made known to each predestined. which is clearly false. Okay, this is all interesting stuff. Let's see what Thomas has to say in his argument from authority. Okay, on the contrary, it is written, whom he predestined, them he also called. Romans 8. All right, let's hear Thomas's logical retort. Respondio, it is fitting that God should predestine men, for all things are subject to his providence, as was shown in question 22, article 2. Now, it belongs to providence to direct things towards their end, their telos, as was said in question 22, articles 1 and 2. The end towards which created things are directed by God is twofold. One, which exceeds all proportion and faculty of created nature, and this end is life eternal. That consists in seeing God, which is above the nature of every creature, as shown in question 12, article 4. So it's twofold. One of them is that we should see God. That's the final telos of everything. Looking for my little St. Thomas Aquinas bookmarker here. The other end, however, is proportionate to created nature. We got two sets. One set is the set of the eternal mind of God. The other set is space-time, to which end created being can attain according to the power of its nature. Now, if a thing cannot attain to something by the power of its nature, it must be directed thereto by another. Thus, an arrow is directed by the archer toward a mark. Hence, properly speaking, a rational creature capable of eternal life is led towards it, directed, as it were, by God. God is directing all creatures to it. And what is it? It is that first thing, beatitude. The reason of that direction pre-exists in God, as in him is the type of the order of all things towards an end, which we proved above to be providence. Now, the type in the mind of the doer of something is to be done is a kind of pre-existence in him of the thing to be done. Again, I'll use my image of a song. I get a song in my mind. I know what I want to do. I have the way it kind of comes is sometimes the song comes full form in a sense. I already kind of know where I'm going with it. I know what it's going to be. Nobody else does because they can't see into the mind of Craig. But you go on Spotify and you hear the Craig Kinsey song, Montrose Boulevard Blues, or the Sideshow Tramp song, Lady Vodka. And you say, wow, how interesting. They did this chord and they did that progression and those words. But in my mind, when it came, before anybody heard all that stuff, boom, it hit me, Lady Vodka. Boom, it hit me, a song about Montrose and all the quirky things that go on there. I've conceived the end before I even began. Hence, the type of the aforesaid direction of a rational creature toward the end of life eternal is called predestination. For to destine is to direct or send. I'm directing a song. Thus, it is clear that predestination, as regards its object, is part of providence. Providence is the power that God has in his overriding authority. The predestination, it seems, is the acting out of that in space-time. All right, reply to objection 1. Damascene calls predestination an imposition of necessity after the manner of natural things which are predestined towards an end. He's saying that what Damascene is saying is that the end is the predetermined. The end. God has determined the end of all things, working towards beatitude. We'll later find out that some people choose against beatitude, and that's part of free will, etc. But the whole point is, the main point, the germane point, is that he is predestining towards an end, and that's what Damascene was talking about. The end is predetermined. This is clear from his adding, quote, he does not will malice, nor does he compel virtue. Ooh, what this means is, let's just take a little break since we were zipping through this thing. I can't tell how many minutes we've been on this, but let's just take a little break to notice what I think Thomas did here. We're at the end of objection 1. He took Larry's quote, and Larry did not finish all the quote. So what we have is the magister coming in the next day and saying, I hear what you're saying, but you didn't finish the quote. This is Thomas's knowledge of the full quote and his knowledge of Damascene and the fathers. He comes in and finishes the quote, which Larry conveniently left off. And he says, Damascene also continues to say, he does not will malice, nor does he compel virtue. Whence predestination is not excluded by him. That's kind of a cute little, I wonder if that's something that happened when they were at the Cateau de Latran, I think it was in Paris, when Thomas was teaching. The students would come up and say things and give objections. The next day, Thomas comes back and gives a reply. Well, he would have had time to go look up Damascene, but he would have known where Damascene was, whatever. Anyway, the point being, this is a cute little drama in the Summa where we're seeing the student ask a question but leave something out, and then the master comes in and knows the rest of it and says that elucidates your previous comment and fills it out and shows the full meaning of what Damascene was trying to say. And that is God predetermines the end, but there still has workings of free will within that set, within that group of space-time creatures working out their salvation. Ex equirere, with exquisite seeking out. Reply to objection 2. Irrational creatures are not capable of that end which exceeds the faculty of human nature, whence they cannot be properly said to be predestined, although improperly the term is used in respect to any other end. What was the question? Further, all creatures are directed to their end by divine providence, but other creatures are not said to be predestined. So he's saying irrational creatures are not capable of that end. Okay, Damascene, or like he was saying about Damascene, is that the end is beatitude. Irrational creatures cannot go to beatitude. So what is being said is they're not predestined in the sense that they're not called to beatitude, but they are still predestined according to God's providence. Reply to objection 3. Predestination applies to angels just as it does to men, although they have never been unhappy. For movement does not take place in species from the term wherefrom, but from the term whereto. Interesting. Movement takes place where to. It's moving towards the end. Because it matters nothing in respect to the notion of making white, whether he who is made white was before black, yellow, or red. That maybe be confusing to you. What Thomas is saying is, if my intention as the creator is to make this part of the painting white, it doesn't matter if it was blue, black, or red before. The end goal of the artist is to turn it white. And so in predestination, we're talking about God's telos, which is beatitude, and that beatitude is the same with the angels according to their nature. Likewise, it matters nothing in respect to the notion of predestination, whether one is predestined to life eternal from the state of misery or not. All right, so we're at the end of the page. We'll develop that more tomorrow. Right now, I'm going to go down and get some food and enjoy a little reading of Lord of the Rings. Guys, we've stepped out of our house. We've stepped out of our hobbit hole. Who knows where your feet will take you? It's a very dangerous journey. We're sitting here with Thomas. We're hearing these words over and over again. And to what telos? And to what end? It's, as I've said before, the end of hearing these things over and over until they sink in and also bring about other questions. So don't worry about how much you understand right now. Worry about continuing the journey, be it to Mordor. All right, folks, I'm going to take my little candle. I'm going to blow it out, and I'm going to head downstairs and join the crew. Guys, do me a favor. Remember, all of this is straw. What matters is that you contemplate it with love and pursue prayer. Go and do thou